Okay, now we have a last short video, which is used as an example. And actually, this example was cool when I used to teach this in the classroom. And maybe I will do it, but not really, because it involves people interacting. And now with COVID-19 spread around, people cannot interact directly, even in the classroom. So let's try to play it virtually and see how it works. So this is a fun game that you can play. And I modified a game existing in the literature with an original twist. So it's my idea. You won't find this anywhere. You won't find it in Fidelius's book. You won't find it online. But it goes like this. In Italy, you know the Italian grading system goes from 18 to 30. And actually, you can get honors if you are super good. So there is a crazy professor, might be me, that decides that you are paired with a classmate in a project. And that's true, but that's not the rule of the game for the real exam of game theory. So don't get me wrong. I have uploaded another video where I explain the real rules of the grading in this exam. These are not the rules. This is just an example I'm making up, okay? Okay, in this example, there is this crazy professor in another class, maybe not ICT for instance, multimedia, another program. And this professor of game theory, well, it's not even Elvina, don't worry. This professor says, in my class, you are paired with another classmate, you don't know him or her, so you cannot communicate. And this is because we want the game to be static, right? So you don't communicate beforehand. If you communicate beforehand, you have multiple interactions. So it's no longer a static game. So the only rules you need to know is that you are asked to decide your own mark. Wonderful. So you can go ahead, and actually when I did this in practice, I did students to write them on a post-it to write their number. So you choose a number between 18 and 30, and so does your classmate. The point is that this is not your final score. This is only your proposal. But you know, in Italy, grading is like bargaining. So you propose a grade, and then the professor checks the number. The professor is not a player, actually, so it's automatic. The numbers are checked. So if they match, if the two numbers are the same, this is the real mark you get. So if you both write 25, the professor takes your, digital record and insert 25 as your grade. If you both write 30, then the professor grades you 30. If you both write 18, the professor grades you 18. However, if they don't match, the professor says, okay, I see one of you is more generous, is more arrogant, actually, is more bold, and the other one is instead more humble. I'm going to reward the humbler of you two. So let's L be the lower number of the two. So whoever wrote the lower number was more modest compared to his classmate or her classmate. So who proposed L gets L plus a reward R. The other one gets L minus R. So it doesn't matter what he wrote. If he wrote something else, so I wrote 23 and another student wrote 25. So the one who wrote 23 actually gets 23 plus R. The other one who wrote 25, it doesn't matter that it was 25. He gets 23 minus R. Okay, that's the rule. And you can play the game with R equal 2. So try to figure out what should you play, and then I'll tell you what is, I'm trying to figure out what your opponent can have played. Okay, so after, in the classroom, usually I let two students compare their numbers. And many students write 30 because they hope to write both 30 and they both get 30. Okay, that is wishful thinking. And if they happen to get both 30, they're happy. Well, not so happy. They have regrets. Why? Because whoever wrote 30 thinks, oh, then I should have written what? You think? 29. Because if I wrote 30 and you wrote 30, I'm immediately, and you too, I'm immediately regretting it. I think, oh, I should have written 29. Why? Because by writing 29, I actually get 29 plus 2, which means I get 30 honors. You instead get 27. Well, I don't care what you get. I'm selfish, right? So I don't care, but I would have gotten better. So double 30 is not a Nash equilibrium. Okay, now whatever you thought of writing, compare with my choice. Let's say you are playing against me. So your number you have in mind, that's your proposal. Well, my proposal is 18 now. Do you have regrets? Think carefully. Maybe you thought 18. Maybe you thought another number. Actually, whatever you thought of, I mean, if you didn't write 18, you write any number, now you are rejected from the exam because you get 18 minus 2. So it's a non-pass in Italy. And so you have regrets, of course, because you got rejected, I guess. If you wrote 18, you don't regret, right? If you check with double 18, this is a Nash equilibrium. So double 18 is the only Nash equilibrium, actually, you can prove it. And now when we play the game in the classroom, sometimes I make it play again, which is kind of cheating because in reality, as I said, you shouldn't play the game once again. So I change the rule. So because if you play the game twice, then you start learning and training yourself, and so you have beliefs, and so it's no longer a static game. But if you play the game entirely from scratch, but now you play with A equal to 10, what happens is that it's very clear that players should play 18. Because 18 is the only Nash equilibrium. So the prediction is 18. This actually sheds some light on how rational you are. Because I intentionally designed this setup I asked even some psychologists to have a clever setup. Well, the solution of the game is written here. For any R greater than 1, so 2 or 10 doesn't matter, there is only one Nash equilibrium. The only Nash equilibrium is to play 18 for both students. And actually playing 18 for both students is not a very satisfactory choice in terms of global efficiency because you end up in double 18 when you could have done double 30. Double 30 would lead you to double 30, and it's clearly better that both students get 30 than both students get 18, right? Still, double 30 is not a Nash equilibrium. Double 18 is, so it's a situation like the prisoner's dilemma. And actually, I chose the setup carefully. The setup was very descriptive of two events that you have in your life. First of all, that professors are jerks. Professors sometimes they design the mechanism of the exam to punish students. Because here, a professor designed the exam so that smart students, so dumb students get punished, of course, because they don't get a good mark. But smart students, get an Nash equilibrium, but they only can reach up to 18. So that's not really very rewarding. On the other hand, there is another element that is probably coherent with your experience. And this is why probably some of you thought of that the right move of this play being 30. Because if you describe the setup as two students, two classmates, two poor students coming from a poor background, coming to Italy to study against the evil professor, it looks like the two students are supposed to collude, to collaborate to beat the evil professor. You see, this is not a game theoretic setup, because in game theory, players are selfish. They don't care about each other. They don't care if they against the professor. They don't respect each other. If you play 30 and the other guy plays 30, you are lucky, because the other guy should have played 29 or maybe 28 even, because then 30-29 is not a Nash equilibrium either, because now both players want to deviate and they want to go down, and you see that the only point where they don't have regrets is 18. Okay, now, the thing is, if you try playing the game, you can play with some of your friends or try it yourself. But if you play with R equal to 2, the punishment for, the idea is this. If you try cheating the other player, you get a reward R. So R equal 2 is generally not enough to betray another student. So for some reason in your brain, there is some hardwired idea that you should not betray another student if R equal 2. So the reward you get for betrayal is not very good. You just get 2 points more in your test. But what if by betraying your fellow student, you get 10 more points in your mark? This will basically change an 18, which is a D, to a 28, which is an A/B. So you probably do it, right? So in reality, this is just to test. These kind of problems are also used in psychology to evaluate how good-natured are people. And it shows that with the proper incentive, you always betray your other players. That's actually a tricky question in that we don't want to deal with these ethical questions. It's just for us, the players are not students, they're not even human beings. So they don't care about betraying each other. They just do what they are programmed to do. And what they're programmed to do is to optimize some problems. So you don't really you shouldn't really feel ashamed for betraying another cellular phone. I mean, your cellular phone designed for optimizing transmission, you want your transmission to be efficient, and you don't care about the other cellular phones of other brands or other users. On the other hand, this also shows that the Nash equilibrium concept is very difficult to capture. I mean, it's very mathematical, so it shouldn't be so difficult. But we often tend to think of some superstructure, and so this is why, I mean, Nash invented it. Nash was diagnosed schizophrenic, so Nash could really detach from reality, and we should do the same, actually. We should detach from any ethical implication, and it can help that we deal with computer programs or cellular phones, not human beings, but in the end, our utility is what we want to maximize. And to maximize your utility, you often end up in allocations or in outcomes that are Nash equilibria, but not of a very efficient kind in terms of Pareto efficiency. Nothing wrong with that. Actually, the task of the engineer can be twofold. First of all, quantify the efficiency, and that's why I gave this tricky definition of price of anarchy, and sometimes to find a way to improve it in a later stage. So that's a very challenging scenario and a very good way of applying engineering know-how. So this is why I think, and again, let me insist again, that this course could be a very useful subject for engineers, even though it is, I mean, sometimes it deals with prisoners in jail or boyfriend and girlfriend watching movies. So what has this to do with, I mean, engineers don't have a girlfriend or boyfriend. Engineers are forever alone. So what has this to do with engineering? Actually, very much, because by designing the solution to this kind of problems, you can probably solve the very same problem for your engineering setup, be it security, be it like interaction over network, or any other kind of information technology problem. And this concludes the lecture.